Is this thing working?
It is working.
Everybody can hear me?
Everybody can hear you.
All right. Let me begin by doing some editing here. RCHS presents, quote, history preserved. The original has a question mark at the end, preserved. Because not everything that's on the square they were going to talk about really was meant to preserve history. There were some other motives. I'm not going to detail each one on that, but I encourage you to think yourself, just why would this be placed there? What's going on there? All right, let me see what I can make it do. All right, we have 30 to talk about. There are 31 up there. I looked at the last one and said, no, that's too wide even to fit on the screen. So we'll identify it when we get down there. And I talk generally extemporaneous on whatever I'm talking about, and so I don't know exactly what I'm going to say till I say it. But knowing that, I encourage you to stop me and ask a question if you got a question. We may answer it, we may not, but don't be embarrassed to interrupt me and ask a question. All right, let's begin with the earliest event memorialized. Yes. I have zero experience with this electronic stuff, so I've got the fellow here to keep me online. We're talking about the first event that is memorialized on the square, and that's the chartering and naming of Rutherford County. The monument was placed in 1946 as part of the Tennessee sesquicentennial. That's 150 years. It's a handsome monument in the northwest corner of the square. And it's an Art Deco style, which is interesting because the Art Deco style was just beginning to fade in 1946, that time period. So we picked up that style. Unfortunately and ironically, the individual memorialized is one of the most undeserving in our history. Before the Revolutionary War, Griffith Rutherford was a successful North Carolina politician, land speculator, but his rank of general was not based on experience or valor. It was given by vote of the North Carolina colonial legislature, and the purpose was they knew that he had some contacts and they were hoping he could recruit members of the militia. He did. He did. And in his first activity with the militia, and I'm going to use his own words. See, after every engagement, whoever was the commanding officer would write a detailed account of what happened. As you might expect, the loser usually writes different from the winner. But in this case, Rutherford, I think, thought he was the winner, so he wrote the account in 1776 with a militia of 2,400 armed men. Quote, we destroyed 36 Indian towns and villages. We cut up and wasted the standing and gathered corn and drove off and destroyed all the flocks of domestic animals that could be found. History doesn't record how many men, women, and children were lost. We know from other records that there were very few, if any, men in these villages at the time. They were all south of it, doing other things. In actual combat with the Loyalists, the Tories, Rutherford had 3 engagements. The first one, he was supposed to come up with reinforcements at the peak of the conflict. He didn't. In the second one, he was supposed to come in with reinforcements. He never showed up at all. And in the third one, the men under his command threw down their arms and fled, and he was captured by the British and stayed in prisoner of war camp for the rest of the war, which is probably the best outcome for the Patriots at that time. He did survive. After the war, he went back to speculating on stock, on land, and engaged in business activity. He had three regular partners: John Sevier, John Donaldson, and the third one was, I'm sure this is an important point, but the third one was the president of the territory of Tennessee, became Tennessee. In contrast, you all know the name Harry Murphy. He really was a Revolutionary War hero. He played a critical role in the Battle of Stony Point, which was a very important tactical battle. This is the only thing, except for one small residential street, kind of a working class community, north or beyond Memorial Street, that has the name Mercury on it. Matt Mercury, a direct name descendant of Hardy Mercury, approached me a number of years ago and pointed that out, that there was nothing for his ancestor, specifically in Murfreesboro or Rutherford County. He said he wanted to put up a marker and was going to work out the politics of it and pay for it, and asked me if I would write the copy for it. I agreed to that. So this is what we ended up with, and it is right in front of City Hall. And unlike the one we just finished with, who I should hand back on Chris's brother for the county was named for him. He never came here, he never made any investment, he never contributed anything towards the development of the county. Harvey Martin was very different. Now he died in 1809, several years before. His family took over 1809, yeah. The city of Murfreesboro was established in 1813, but the influence Hardy Murphy had on it was through his family. He had 4 daughters and one named son who all settled or owned property in Rutherford County. And the name should be familiar to you. The 4 daughters married Burton, Hilliard, Dr. Burton, Maney, Hillary, Dr. Maney. Why can I forget that one? And he had one son who carried the name. And what's interesting is that when the will was probated, Hardy Murphy divided up almost all of what had been designated as Mercury, everything above, north of it, south of it, and east of it, and a little bit to the southwest. And the 5 children, through their estate holdings, really changed what lived in Murfreesboro. Now, when we talk about local heroes, more or less, obviously Nathan Bedford Forest comes up. This, as best I can determine, is the first plaque or memorial put in the county or in the city. For General Nathan Bedford Forest, and if you read it, the Daughters of the Confederacy really took the lead in these memorials for heroic services rendered to citizens of Murfreesboro on July 13, 1882, which happened to be his birthday too. And you can see when the date at the bottom, it was the 50th anniversary of his heroic services. This is to the right of the door to the east of the courthouse, very prominent. And interesting though that it doesn't explain what the heroic services were. It just gives the date. You know, we've been through in the last few years, hopefully settled down, quite a bit of destruction and removal and defacing of plaques relating to the Confederacy generally, but Nathan Bedford Forest in particular. This plaque was also defaced, and the mayor at that time did the right thing. When he arrived, this is Ernest Burgess, when he arrived and saw what had happened, he didn't call a meeting, he didn't call a fire department, he very quietly brought in someone to clean it up and avoided exactly what the perpetrators were trying to do, and that was focus a negative attitude, opinion on Forrest.
Would that be 1862?
Yeah.
1862 was 50 years before. Yeah, 1912. Interesting that about 1890 coming forward was what the historians call the era of commemoration. We were a little late getting into it. July 13, 1912 was the first plaque, and the big monument, which we'll get to in a few minutes, was originally 1902. But this period beginning in the 1890s, all over the southeast, plaques and statues, memorials were being put together. Now, as I said, it doesn't really tell us what the heroic services were. Fortunately, some years later, the State Historic Commission put up this plaque explaining what happened on July 13th, 1862. If you read through it, it's a pretty good account until you get down to the last sentence. His staff, while other units of the brigade busied themselves elsewhere. You think they were having a picnic? Or harvesting or something? I don't know why when someone writes a memorial like this, they tag it on a sentence that says somebody was doing something else somewhere else. What happened was Forrest, during a brilliant tactician, divided his force into three parts, sent two of them around to the north side, and they captured the entire federal brigade that was camped right here in our midst. And I went back and checked what they managed to salvage from it. $500,000, that's in our money, $500,000 of munitions and supplies, 60 wagons, 175 horses, 300 mules, and 4 cannon. Not bad for busying themselves elsewhere. Also, then this is on the southeast corner of the square. If you cross over to the business side, right next to what we all know as Shackley's Photography, there's an open area. It used to be the Commerce Union Bank. And the property assessor tells me that it's now private property owned by the bank, Bank of America there. But laying on the ground on a small concrete platform. The wedding. There it is.
Oh, okay.
Here it is. I'll see it up there.
There we go. Okay.
Yeah, there you go, Morgan's wedding. My first question when I look at it is who put it on the ground and why? But it is on the ground, and as you can see, it's deteriorating rather rapidly.
May I say something, Greg?
Yeah.
The very last line said also President Jefferson.
I know, we're gonna get to that. That was written by the same people that did the last one, I think. But it is on apparently private property. It's being neglected. And, I'll let Shirley explain why there is a plaque for Morgan's wedding. And this plaque would have been made, in the 1940s, 1950s maybe. So it's a long time after the wedding. If you want to make it interesting, you can note that General Morgan, immediately after the wedding, took his bride and went back to the battlefield and put her in his headquarters up near where he was raiding in Kentucky. He did manage to get killed. I presume that somebody brought her back.
She was in Danville, Virginia, that's where he rode out of, when he was killed in Greenville on September the 4th of 1864.
And now you can look at that last sentence. They talk about all the people that were there, his colleagues and friends and fellow leaders of the Confederacy. But down at the bottom he said, almost as an afterthought, also present was the President Jefferson Davis. Can't you see Donald Trump coming in to a wedding and getting lowest billing? I'm not sure just what was going on there. Right now, the next one. No? There you go. I'm glad I'm not doing that. The Confederate monument, the most conspicuous thing on the square in terms of memorials is the Confederate monument. The stonework you see is all actually cut, was all actually cut here in Rutherford County, native stone. The little fellow on top is a generic representation of a Confederate soldier. If you went around the South, anywhere you find the monument still standing, you'd probably find the same little fellow on it. The stonework, if you want a souvenir, is coming apart. You can run your finger between the stone and pull out mortaring. We brought it to the attention of the mayor. We're hoping we can get some funding to repoint those joints before things start really falling apart. The monument was originally placed in 1902, directly in the middle of what's now East Main, where East Main meets the North Church, South Church. Actually meets right at where they meet, where they join. And was moved about 10 years later. Before we talk about that, let's get on to a few other things. In front of the monument, you see the newer looking stone there. It was placed by the Sons of the Confederate Veterans, and is a good reference piece because it's a list of all the contingents, all of the regiments that had a Rutherford County soldier amongst the personnel. For the average historian, the information is very difficult to use, but for the serious historians of the Civil War, very helpful information. The flag up there, I hope some of you recognize it, is the first national flag of the Confederacy. Not the battle flag that some people object to, but the first national flag of the Confederacy. Why is that being displayed here in Murfreesboro, Rutherford County? Well, if you look at the history, early years of the war, the only flag other than the United States flag that flew over the courthouse or over the battlefield at Stones River was this national flag of the Confederacy. not the battle flag. The battle flag never was used in Rutherford County. Another mayor acting very wisely, I thought, Mayor Ketron, working with myself and a number of others, set up a museum in the courthouse, but in defining the museum and the proper use of the courthouse and the immediate surroundings, he included enough of the immediate surroundings to take in this monument, which means when we get into, I hope we never do, but if we ever have a negotiation, and the proposal is that we put all this Confederate stuff in the museum where it ought to be, it's already in the museum. The museum extends out to include the monument and any of the other related memory there. Let's go to the next one.
So we're not anywhere in the same order.
Yeah, they're like, you skip one.
That's,
No?
Yeah, this way, that's just what he's got on his notebook.
honor decks the turf that wraps their clay. This is what's on the back of the monument. Honor decks the turf that wraps their clay. Don't you wish we still talked like that? All right, move on.
Hope you match. Hey, you match.
All right, this is one that, as we were talking earlier, this one clearly is an attempt to preserve some history that otherwise would have been completely lost. Any of you remember the McFadden House and where it is? Where it was. The McFadden House in its last years of service was the office for the newspaper, the Daily News Journal. And when we started working on the Judicial Center and the parking lot to serve the Judicial Center, I wrote an article, wrote a column about what was going to be lost. The McFadden House for its last 50-some years housed the newspaper offices, but it had an interesting history before that. Most interesting point is it was built by a Confederate senator for his sister, who used it a relatively short time. And then during the occupation, it was the home and the office of the mayor of Murfreesboro, appointed by the Federals. So the house had history on both sides of the war. We wrote about it, wrote about the others who had used it, built it. And I got a call from Commissioner Alan McAdoo, who was at that time chairman of the county building committee and was involved in building the Judiciary Center. And he says, Greg, if you'll write up the copy, I'll see that it gets mounted on the parking building. And what we decided to do was to put it right where the front door of the house was, which means it's actually on the back side of the parking garage. But Mayor Burgess convened a ceremony, and I remember my comment was, this is the way I think plaques should be used. It's not honoring or memorializing an individual, it's giving the history of that particular property. I also think it's got more words on it than any other plaque in the county. And if it wasn't for Bubba Woodson, his help, I'm not sure we ever would have gotten them on there. Thanks.
Charge about it.
All right. This one was a challenge because it's polished marble, I think. And it's on the west side, up on if you're going in the door on the west side, it's up to your left. Kind of inconspicuous, but really very significant. it lists the 1908 committee. And if you'll go there and squint a little, one evening, sometime after sunset maybe, you can read the members of that committee. Now, what is this committee? I'm still not sure. And I've read a lot about it. But in 1908, the county court authorized this group to essentially tear down the courthouse and build another one in its place. And a lot of other authority with respect to the court square. And they went to work, 1909, they knocked off the top half of the courthouse, including the roof and what was then better characterized as the steeple. If you look at a picture and think for a minute, it used to look a lot like the state capitol. But they took it down to 2 stories and then built it back up with a different roof. They trashed the steeple, which was made of brick and masonry, and put up a cupola, a dome. If you get up there and knock on it, you'll see it's made out of tin with about 30 coats of paint on it. And then they took the statue that was out in front and moved it over to the side where it is now, the Civil War Monument. And when they built back, they added another floor, the 3rd floor. They changed the roof to a flat roof and then put up what might better be called a bell tower. Why? My only guess is somebody was completely taken with this new style called the Greek Revival, and they had control so they could change the look of the court. I wince every once in a while when someone says, well, it's one of the only 5 or 6 courthouses in the state of Tennessee that was built before the war. Well, our courthouse was built before the war, but in 1909, 1910, 1911, we took it down. And we put up something else. So I have a little trouble with the claim. We did put central heat in it. I guess that was one reason very few people complained at the time. If you go look at the 1920s editorials of the Home Journal, you'll see not everybody was happy with it, and they continued to complain and argue about it for some years. To me, what was really going on there is kind of a mystery of our history. Next. Placed in memory of the Rutherford County boys following in the tradition that had been begun with the Civil War. You can see the United Daughters of the Confederacy were recognizing the World War veterans. This is not just those who died in the war, this was all of them. And interesting, United Daughters of the Confederacy by this period, which would have been in the 1920s, it emerged as the leading group in terms of memorials and recognition. This plaque is on the left side of the east door, balancing the Nathan Bedford's Forest on the other side of the door. And this one begins the recognition of what I call the 20th century wars, the First World War, the Second World War. Right out in the West Yard is this Gold Star Memorial. Any of you remember the Gold Stars? Originally they were little flags that family would hang in the window and had a gold star on it, and a member of your family had died in combat, and you would be recognized for it. This Gold Star Memorial came along after the war. And if you look at those who were involved in it, you see the Tennessee Federation of Garden Clubs, the SAR, and the Daughters of the Confederacy is stepping back at this point. The next one over, Blue Star Memorial, and part of it looks like some of the other garden clubs wanted to get involved, which is good. The Blue Star Memorial was almost, hey, what about us? A lot of us went to war and weren't killed, but we made the sacrifice. So the Blue Star Memorial was organized, like the Gold Star, it was a national movement. Blue Star was a national movement, and you'll see on many court squares, yards around municipal public buildings, these Gold Star, Blue Star memorials. I think this is probably one of the more appropriate placements around our own courthouse. Next over. Now, two that also are very common in public places are the memorials to those who died in service, not in the military, specifically the firefighters and the law enforcement people. The firefighters monument was put up till 2011, and they were backtracking, picking up some of the names. When I first looked at it, I thought, was this something inspired by 9/11? But it's 10 years or 9 years later, so it may have been inspired by 9/11, and just took that long to fund it and place it. Unfortunately, it's placed right at the northwest corner with the Rutherford Monument. And why I say that is because that place is crowded. You got your star memorials, you've got the big monument for Rutherford, and now we've got these two smaller, and we'll see a couple more before we finish. This one's 2011. They've got room on this one, and then it continues on the back side. And on top it identifies the firefighters union or brotherhood that's responsible for it, both placement and keeping it up to date. The next one is the same type of thing. This one goes for law enforcement. Here I recognize a number of names, and it does already go over onto the back. And it predates 9/11, was set up in 2000. Right, the next one's going to take a little bit. I don't like the way this one worked out because this is the before and after are too tight. You can't see the surroundings. The one to the left is, of course, the slave memorial. When we were dedicating it, I remember saying it is most appropriate that there be a memorial of this sort. The top of it has the message, which is essentially memorial to those who, as slaves, were sold in the marketplace. The landscaping, which you can't see very well, was done by county personnel. They also placed the stone, stepping stone in front of it. To the right is where we found it. We found it in a discard pile behind a business, a countertop, granite countertop, whatever it was, business here in town. And one of our friends and associates, Jake Shaw, told me about it. And so I rounded up the ladies of the Afro-American Society, and I said, let me show you some examples of what could be done or what there is. And we drove around the county looking at different things. When I took them over there, I was a little uneasy about showing them the trash pile. But I said, look at this, at least is this the type of thing you'd like to have? And they immediately said, yes, this is what we want. It's a black marble. The top of it was glass. We knew that wasn't what we wanted. But Jake Shaw said he could replace the glass, cut it and replace it for us. And that's with the society funding it. We took it to the county commission, appreciating that there could be some controversy about it, and took it through the museum commission first, then took it to the members of the commission in session. There's 21 members there, and we got 20 votes in favor of placing it. And they left to us, the mayor, and the maintenance people as to where to put it. If you haven't seen it, it's right outside the window in the mayor's office, off the northeast corner of the courthouse. I had more than one objective. I favored placing it and doing it as much as we could the way they wanted it. But I also suggested to the mayor and others that we place it right outside the mayor's window, because there was another one of these wayside markers sitting there, which had bad information and was deteriorating. And so what I suggested was, let's get rid of it, pull it, and use the space for this memorial, which is what we did. And the next slide is the one that we replaced, Rutherford County Courthouse. You'd read that as it has sat there for 20 years. And it'll convince you that the most important thing that happened with respect to the courthouse was some poor fool fell off the top and broke his neck. And then he goes on to say nobody knew who he was, so we put him on display in the window, and after a while buried him in a pauper's grave. None of that actually happened, except the guy broke his neck falling off the top. From then on, his partner was the first to get to him. He had identification on his clothing. His family claimed the body within 2 days. He was, Ray Royce was his name, and they took him home to Missouri and buried him. And for 30 years, 25 to 30 years, we've been telling some hokey story about it. And I just wanted to get rid of it. And here was my chance. So,
The rest of the
so
story.
we put the slave memorial, we got rid of Mr. Royce. We still have the thing hidden off in a warehouse. We'll do something with it. But, all right. Courthouse, cornerstone. That's a cornerstone of the courthouse, 1960. What's going on here? But if you go inside the courthouse on the south side, just inside the door, there's a plaque that says the additions to the courthouse were done in 1960. I don't know where, if anywhere, there's the original cornerstone for the courthouse. It may be behind one of the additions. But the 1960, I'm sure was placed before the era of the weed eater. Because looking around, in fact, I'll tell you about one in a minute, where the weed eater just eats up the stone. So this one's been cut back and preserved. The next image is the plaque that explains what about the additions when they were done. And this one I like to say, yeah, this one is recording history, preserving history, because my daddy's name down at the bottom. But at least it tells the time and those who were involved at the time. Right across from it, in that same little empty space, is a plaque we put up very recently about the Murfreesboro, B-O-R-O-U-G-H founders. That was the way I got past the, shouldn't this be across the street in the city hall? And I said, no, we're talking about the founders of Murfreesboro, O-U-G-H. This is a story that for some reason was hidden, almost literally. It tells the names of the 4 individuals who were appointed by the state legislature to find a place for and to build a new county seat. And it specified that it would be named Murfreesboro. There are all kinds of variations on that, but nobody could name the 4, and nowhere was there a record except in the official records of who it was that really cited and built Murfreesboro, the new county seat. Why was this information, why was this story not told? As I went through the public records, and after they built the town, they took over and managed it, ran it, and as you can guess, without electoral support, they just were in charge. And the citizens, I think, took exception to that and eventually got the legislature to unappoint them and then decided not to talk about it. And as you might guess, money had something to do with it. But I approached the city about placing it, and nobody was interested. So we managed to get it placed in the courthouse, and hopefully it will be referenced in the future to tell the untold story. Speaking of untold stories, this monument obelisk is on the southwest corner, and this illustrates something that I think all you historians should consider, and that is who can decide what is the factual history. This says that for 8 years, Murfreesboro was the capital of Tennessee. And it says that because in 1948, the state legislature passed a private act that said for 8 years, it's 2016 through, try again, 1818 through 1826, something in that area. The state legislature met in Murfreesboro. So according to this monument, the legislature by its vote made that a history, a fact in our history. But wait a minute. The legislature meets once every 2 years, and back in those early days, it usually would meet for maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks at the longest. The governor, in the meantime, worked 5 to 6 days a week in Nashville. The state Supreme Court met, convened, and rendered its opinions in Nashville. The state bank was in Nashville. The state library was in Nashville. The state archives was in Nashville. And the state prison was in Nashville. Sounds to me like the functions of the state government in that time period were scattered about, with the judicial and executive functions based in Nashville and the legislative function in Murfreesboro. So why the big press to have it declared the state capital for that time period, as opposed to 1 or 2 cities that had state functions based there? That's what I call promotion, maybe tourism, ego, pride, what have you. So if you're uncomfortable with having the state legislature by vote decide what the factual history is, maybe we ought to consider a different approach. What if we could find a solid private group that consider the facts and take a vote among its private members and make the same determination. Now, where would you find a group like that? How about the DAR? This plaque is on the west side of the courthouse. We've got the 1908 plaque on the left as you're going in from the west side. This is on the right, and it seems like the DAR, also probably by a vote of the members, has come to the same conclusion. People ask me, is it true, is it correct that Murfreesboro was the state capital one time? I always say, maybe. Depends on what you decide, how you define state capital. If the state capital is where the legislature meets, then the answer is yes. The state capital is where the governor sits and does his work. The Supreme Court makes its decision, and it's Nashville. I'll stick with maybe. This is the only plaque that I can say with certainty is on private property. It's on a private residence, the Lowry home, on the, just off the immediate square as you're going down towards, what is it, Vine Street? I was consulted by the ladies of the Afro-American Society about their wanting to mark the Black Business District as it was some years ago, make slide. And I said, well, I think that is worth doing. Do you know what make slide means? Well, it means where the black businesses were. I said, make slide goes back to the Civil War period. You can find it in writings of that Civil War period, and it identifies the red light district in the community. And the lady said, well, we probably won't use that phrase. And I said, well, that's perhaps a good decision. But then when they showed me the plaque that they were going to mount, I said, oh, I said, you changed your mind. It says Black Business District, parentheses, mink slide, and then goes on and details it. And they said, when they finally were settling on the copy for the plaque and passing it along the membership, one fella and subsequently others joined and said, you can't just leave mink slide out of it. We've been calling it that for 100 years, that part of town. So they finally decided to put it in parentheses up under the Black Business District. And I wonder if the Lowrys realize what's been tacked up to their building. It's a little bit off the sidewalk. If you go down to that corner, you'll find it just inside a door area, down in that area.
Greg, is it not true that there were actually mink still being trapped for their hides, their skins, or furs, or whatever?
And it has absolutely nothing to do with the part of town that was called Mink Slide.
And they didn't skin them on, they didn't skin them, and it then slide them down the hill or something.
I can show you 4 or 5 different interpretations of what Mink Slide meant. And that includes a contemporary song by Pink, and where she talks about make my mink slide. I think we've taken this far enough.
No more questions ever.
Don't believe everything CBR net wrote. I got to ask him one time, he and I got to be close friends. I said, where did you get this story about mink slide? And he took a deep breath and smiled and says, I made that up. But it's logical.
Mr. Tucker, how did, when they said gentrification stopped it, like what buildings were built, or you know how it ended, how it was sort of pushed out?
How the Black Business District ended?
Yeah.
Bill Wall Street.
Yeah, the city condemned and took everything down there and put City Hall, which took all the business district of Mink Slide.
The city hall that's there now, or
You know what?
that like where the Regions Bank, the big skyscraper, or
Yeah,
that's fine.
the tall main building is on the edge of it. And I get asked, where exactly was the Mink Slide area? I always wonder, why do you want to know? And I can tell you that it was officially defined by the U.S. Army during the maneuvers. They defined it by street corner, street corner, street corner, and said it's off limits. Off limits.
All good? Yeah.
Sure, we don't have to talk about why it was off limits.
There were many slides in other cities.
Mink Slide always starts conversation. All right, the next slide is on the southeast corner of the square. And this to me is one of the most appropriate and most justified. And it's our awarded. The tall middle part is, so you can see this was done sometime in the 1950s and thereafter. The awarded in the two world wars are in the center, tall piece. And then it got to be so voluminous, I guess, they added the first two steps down, just for the world wars. Later, the two blocks you see on the far out are Korea and Vietnam. These were handled by and produced and paid for originally by the American Legion, Veterans of Foreign Wars. If you go read it, it attempts to pick up the war did after Vietnam. But we struggle with exactly what was the war and what do we call it. But they're the smallest blocks on either side. Someone, I hope the county, is trying to keep up with the combat losses and figure out what to call some of our conflicts today. But it is maintained, and the wreath there is artificial, but is in good shape, and someone apparently is keeping up with it. Architecture on the square, I'm not even going to attempt the subject there, but I'm reminded by this. This is one of 8 wayside memorials, or wayside something, that were done in 2003 for the anniversary of the county. And I'm not sure who put them together. I understand there was some Chamber of Commerce money made available. But they're fortunately deteriorating. You'll know in a minute why I say fortunately. There was a plastic fiberglass cover, which at the time it was put on, I'm sure it was clear. You can see now it's cloudy. But also, if you rub your hand across it, you get splinters. And then down at the corners, the metal is beginning to rust out and such. So, myself and John Lodell convinced the current mayor that they needed to be replaced. So, over the next couple of years, all of them will disappear at least long enough to be redone. And remember, we got one in the warehouse somewhere. I'm hoping to but again, looking for opportunity, I said, good, this gives us an opportunity to revise the copy on each one of them, because there's just an awful lot that's misleading, and misleading in some cases, I think, for a purpose. But we're going to try to take it back to where we can factually demonstrate from official records. For example, Art Center's post office should be Post Office Art Center chronologically. The copy in the first paragraph, I think.
The library. Wasn't it the library?
We'll get there.
Okay.
It was this morning, I hope it's still. First paragraph says that there had never been a post office built before with this Italian, Renaissance Italian age style. So we have the only one in the United States built that way. Except for Philadelphia, Seattle, Niagara, New York. And where does that come from? Go inside the building, they got a beautiful display of the history of the building, the art center, and the post office and such. And it specifically said that, at least in those three cities, this is exactly the same. And part of the logic, which is argued in the copy, is that, well, people were opposed to it because it didn't mirror, reflect, it wasn't compatible with the Greek revival style of the courthouse. Okay, look at the dates. This one was dedicated in 1909 on the cornerstone, was probably completed and occupied in 1911. What's the courthouse doing in that exact same time period? It's coming down. So, we weren't building things compatible with the courthouse, because at that time, nobody knew what it was going to look like when it was finished up. I think the design used in the post office, which was one of they had a catalog of different designs they could use, probably was meant to be compatible with Oaklands. Look at the front of Oaklands. That's a classic Italian style. And put it aside the post office, and you can see there was some effort there to reflect what was the most influential structure in the area at the time that he mentioned. View of East Main Street, that one we just decided we'll rewrite part of it because it's not too far off. Part we wanted to rewrite though is that it says the reason Union University was called Union University was an effort at ecumenical treatment. See if they couldn't get all the denominations to come together. No. The reason for Union University in that name was that they were going to train reverends, pastors, preachers for the Catholic churches, hoping that by training them all the same way, they could halt the splintering of the Baptists. Free will Baptist, primitive Baptist. So what they were trying to do was hold together the Baptist denomination, not trying to attract the Methodists. This one's sad. We built them back in the 1990s a judicial building, after all the judicial activity in there. And then a couple of years ago, we built a judicial building and moved everything into there and left the one on the square. That was kind of confusing. Where are we going? So we put up a sign so people would know what was there and put the address on it, 20 North. Did you know people started calling the building the 20 North building? It's what we call unintended consequences. Now, anybody in county government knows the 20 North building, knows what's there. And the building originally was dedicated in honor of three outstanding jurists. One in the Chancery Court, one in the General Sessions, and one in the Circuit Court. And so the original plaque, Buckner, Ruppner, Stegall, Judicial Building, dedicated 1999. Look at the condition of that plaque. I mean, what's going to eventually happen? That memorial, or that honor, is going to disappear. And we got the 20 North building. That happens all too often. Uses change, names change. One of the reasons for these memorials is to override that, so we won't forget who was who was what.
Greg, can you, when was it the Lima Library? The post office and then the art center, what, do you know the history there?
Yeah, my father was the architect on it. In 1962, they converted it to the library. In 1995, the library was gone to its new building, and the art center opened. And glad you asked, because I was over there yesterday and checked 1995 is when the art center opened. In the 1960s, I may be off a year or so, was when the post office moved and the city and county took the building over and converted it to the library. All right, this one's interesting. On the west side of the library, west side of the courthouse, too close to the corner of the Griffith Rutherford Monument and the others crowded around there, is I think marble with a glass top, and in that glass top is an open Bible. Now, obviously the first reaction would be, isn't that unconstitutional? Maybe. I hope nobody ever challenges it, because you probably would lose. But no source is identified. We don't know. I don't know who put it there. And the position, I think, is awkward. It could have been placed in a better area around the square. But it's open, and I want to know what's it open to and why. And it's open to Psalms 98 through 102. And remember the function of the courthouse originally. So I read through these, and there is, make a joyful noise unto the Lord, enter into his gates with thanksgiving, and into his courts with praise. The king's strength also loveth judgment. I will sing of mercy and judgment unto thee, O Lord, will I sing. I have no idea whether all this, those, or any particular one motivated the Bible on the square. If any of you have any information about the Bible on the square.
What corner is that on again?
It's on the northwest corner near the Griffith Memorial. All right, one or two more here. You're looking at the oldest marker of any kind on the square. It's even dated 1869. Who is L.G. Pierce? Anybody know L.J. Pierce? He did a good job, because it's there, it's in plain view, and nobody ever sees it or remembers it. L.J. Pierce was a lawyer back during the Civil War. He apparently had a inside somehow with the occupying Yankees. And when the war ended, and they reopened the courts under control of the occupying Yankees, the Reconstruction, he got licensed back in to practice, admitted to the courts, and he worked foreclosures, taking fees for handling the foreclosures. Because during the Civil War, a lot of the locals were borrowing money, putting up their farm or whatever as security, and after the war, there was a run of foreclosures, and Pierce served as a lawyer in that activity. Probably took possession of some of the property himself at the time. We know that he somehow was able to buy the corner of West Main and Church Street, West Main and Maple. Tore down the old wooden structure and built him a nice brick building and decided to put his name on it. L.J. Pierce, 1869. You want any more time? Build something and put your name on it. And next time you're out in the square, see if you can find it. I have talked to people who walk that corner every day. One of them runs a hardware store down there. and he had never focused on it, but it's in plain view. And I'm confident it's the oldest memorial or plaque, whatever you want to call it, on the square. Everybody knows what that is, surely. I'm not even sure it fits in this discussion, but it's a plaque, it's on the square. Anybody know where it is? Anybody know what it is? That's the base point for any surveys, or distances, probably in all of Rutherford County. If they tell you Rutherford, Murfreesboro is X miles from the Woodbury, they're usually not, the base of it is a marker like this. Where is it? Do you need to find it? Would you know where to look? It's hiding right behind the Civil War monument. Any other questions on any point, or on it generally? If nothing else, we now have a file of pictures of everything on the square, except, I told you there's a piece of metal fencing right there close to the slave monument that says, "This fence encircled the courthouse originally, contributed by Bubba Woodfin." I wouldn't argue with him about whether it was or wasn't. Makes a good display. Thank you.